Hi guys, my goodness, it takes some neck to light a fire and then turn up and try and pretend to be one of those fighting the blaze. Well, that's exactly what Brexit charlatan Nigel Farage did when he saw tractors and protesters from Save British Farming descend on London on Monday evening. He is one of those who sold the lie that things would improve post-Brexit, claiming that the EU would treat Britain as before, but also that sending away foreigners, British people would do the jobs on farms. He's now turned up to no doubt try and deflect any blame away from him and on to the Tories.
So my understanding is these are mostly Kent farmers, and there are lots of different issues here. There's cheap imports that worry them. There's late payments from the British government for the new agricultural scheme. There's a feeling that the countryside isn't really being supported. But I think there's a whole mass of reasons, and what I'd like to know is, are there just one or two clearly defined issues? It's important to remember that leaving the common agricultural policy means we can't blame the European Commission anymore. It's totally in our hands. So I'm here to try and find out what is it that really unites these people.
Well, do you want to know what really unites them? Well, the head of the organisation organising the protest said this back in February.
Producing probably the world's highest standard food in the UK, imports are produced to a much lower level, which is fine. But what's making foreign food cheaper is lower levels of production cost and sustainability. So all we're asking for is level playing fields. At the moment, it's just utterly soul-destroying.
You say all you're asking for, but that would mean rewriting trade deals, wouldn't it?
Well, maybe those trade deals shouldn't have been put in place in the first.
Do you think it's got worse or better since Brexit?
Brexit has made things more difficult. Exporting goods from the UK is much more difficult, and importing goods into doesn't seem to have changed.
No, it hasn't changed because the UK government is not carrying out checks on goods at the moment anyway. They may do it in the future, but they're not carrying out checks on goods moving from the EU into GB. Not the UK, because Northern Ireland is a separate case, but we're talking about GB here. So if the UK government is not carrying out checks or sufficient checks, it means that EU farmers are at an advantage, while UK farmers who are exporting into the single market are facing full checks, which means they're at a disadvantage. So yes, Brexit is not working out very well. Now, you also mentioned trade deals. It's interesting because this week New Zealand is about to ratify a free trade agreement with the European Union, and I covered this in another video, where it seems both sides are pretty happy. If we compare this with the UK-New Zealand trade deal, we had UK farmers deeply concerned while New Zealand farmers were celebrating. You know, you even had, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Australian or New Zealand news reporters were laughing at the situation, laughing at how Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and the UK government had given away everything and then been the bigger economy, which was absurd, which was insane. Now, what's Farage doing there? I think what Farage is doing is he's trying to drum up support for Reform UK because he doesn't care about the farmers, he doesn't care about their plight, he's trying to take advantage of the situation. That's what he does. So I'm pretty sure he's down there saying, look, you know, don't blame me, it's the Tories. You notice here in this report, or this clip of the report, he said, well, you can't blame the European Commission anymore because we left the Common Agricultural Policy. So you have to blame the UK government. They haven't delivered for you. So this is about him drumming up support for Reform UK. Because remember, Reform UK is still the Brexit party. And they're going to say, it's not Brexit's fault, it's the type of Brexit that was implemented by the Tories. So he's there, of course, to try and take advantage of the doom and gloom that the farmers are going through. They have been thrown under a tractor or under a bus, whatever, by Brexiteers like himself, but of course he's going to say, it's nothing to do with me, even though I promised you the sun, moon and stars back in 2016. Well, let's actually get to this. This is an article from the Spectator, the pro-Tory, pro-Brexit Spectator from 2014. So this is 2 years before the Brexit referendum. And it says here, are Nigel Farage's agricultural policies really unrealistic and uncosted? Notice the phrasing here. Is Nigel really wrong? So it's sort of given away at the very beginning. Unfortunately, it's behind a paywall, so we can't read it all, but I'll leave a link if you want to try and access it. But it says, Despite the rumpus that Farage's presence created at the game fair, it's still debatable whether Britain's presence in the EU is a good thing for the countryside and rural communities. Just let that marinade in your mind for a moment. The Spectator, of course, pro-Brexit, trying to poison the well here. It's debatable whether the Britain's presence in the EU is a good thing for farming. Then it goes on to say, Ross Murray, Deputy President of the Country Land and Business Association, which sponsors the fair, argued that EU exports, which British farmers depend on, would be cut to shreds if we left the EU. And we'd be completely at the mercy of the supermarkets. This is exactly... So, I don't know where Ross Murray is now, but he needs an OBE or something, because he was completely correct here. That's exactly what the farmers are complaining about today. That British farmers depend on exports. Those exports have been cut to shreds because what's happening is the EU is applying full checks while the UK isn't. And of course, they're at the mercy of the supermarkets, because if they can't... this has always been the problem. Because of the ending of freedom of movement, it means farmers have less staff available, so they have to pay more, so their costs are higher. Also because of energy and the way the UK is no longer a member of the European Union, energy prices are also higher. So farmers have, in general, higher costs. But if the costs are too high for the supermarket, well, the supermarket will just import the goods from somewhere else. We saw it with turkeys at the beginning of Brexit, where turkey farmers were not able to compete with the prices in the supermarket, so the supermarkets just bought them from Germany and Poland, I believe. Goes on to say both through direct payments and investment in the wider rural economy, is something that we simply can't afford to turn our backs on, he said. So yes, completely correct here. Everything he has said has come true. But Farage had a counter-argument, and it is that in the long term, our farming industries would be better off if we can control them ourselves by being outside the EU. How's that working out? In terms of trade, he claims that since we buy more from the EU than they buy from us, the links that are currently in place will continue unhindered. So how could it continue unhindered if leaving the single market means barriers to trade? So what Farage was not talking about, of course, at the time was leaving the single market. But I'm sure if you were to ask him, he said, well, that's neither here nor there. So he probably wouldn't say anything about leaving the single market. He said, we don't have to leave the single market. We can be still part of the European Union. Or we can still be part of the single market but be outside the European Union. Or we can leave the single market but we'll still be trading with the EU because they desperately need our products, or something like that. So whatever way you put it, it would be a win. Either being in the single market or outside the single market. Whatever day of the week it suited him to say it. So he was, of course, proven wrong here, and Ross Murray was proven correct. Now, will Farage admit this? Of course not. He will go back to his old line of, well, it's not my fault, it's the Tories. The Tories haven't implemented Brexit correctly. If I was in charge, I would have implemented a good Brexit for British farming, and they wouldn't be in this situation. And unfortunately, many farmers, I'm sorry to say, will believe him. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.